Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So in the last video, I was talking about the last time that I spent in jail and what was the cause and what the change was. So like as I mentioned, what I was doing was during the time that I was reading. I can't remember the books that my mother sent at that time, because every time that I was locked up, she was sending me books. I would give her like, give me this, send me this, because all of them, they were in my library. So I always had like a large library of books. I used to go to used bookstores and just, buy like mostly like just like revolutionary history type books. So I can't remember. Like I remember reading Frantz Fanon. Like I said, I mentioned that, but the other books, I can't remember specifically what I read, but I just, like I said, I know the whole time, it was just book after book after book after book. And sometimes, occasionally, I would, maybe grab like a Stephen King book or something. Like Stephen King was always popular in the jails. I think Stephen King, a lot of his popularity probably came from jails and prisons, Allahu Musta'an. But like that was like very, very, very occasional. That wasn't the norm ever, But I probably read more Stephen King maybe later on in my life than I read in those days. So a long time. But after I got out of jail, like I would like to sit there and say like, okay, like I was a changed man, and I'm ready. Because like right before I was leaving the jail, the last time that I did talk to the girl that I was with, I told her, I was like, look, all this type of lifestyle that we're doing and everything, I said, it's got to end. When I get out of jail, we're gonna go to the masjid and we're gonna have an Islamic marriage. If you're not with that, then I can't. I'm done with you. I can't be with you anymore. I can't continue like living my life like this anymore. It's just because there's certain times like in a person's life, like see that time that I was in jail, I could have sat there the whole time, for those 90 days, blamed my mother, blamed my father, blamed my father's a drug addict, my mother was a drug addict, and and all this, and they caused my life, and I could have done that. But, and that's what most people did. And that's why I didn't talk to the people there. But in that time in jail, I like became more introspective. And I started to realize that, look, man, all this stuff in my life, I'm the cause of it. It's my behavior. It's these behavior patterns. Like there's a certain set of behavior that just kept, returning all the time. It started with like the music. Then it came with the drugs and the drinking. And then the violence. And then me being back in jail. So once I started noticing this pattern, and when I was in jail, because in jail, we didn't have TV, we didn't have music. All you had is books, you had a deck of cards, you had a set of dominoes, and you could go outside and do push-ups. And I chose the books and the push-ups, or basketball sometimes. And then that was that, And like I said, other than that, I kept my interactions with people very, 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 very limited. We had a ping pong table, so sometimes I'd go there and play ping pong. One of the best ping pong players in there at that time was Sheik. Sheik ended up getting executed, I guess you could say. Along with Sheik, he got his own boys put him on the ground and shot him twice in the head. So but at that time he was young fighter, But he used to play. He used to go and play him ping pong sometimes. Other than that, I kept my interactions with people very, very limited. Because I was thinking, I was like, in the whole thing that I was looking at, is the maturing attitude. See, the people, they start to mature when they start to take accountability, and they start to take, they understand. Like once you come to that realization that this is my life. It's not my mother's life. This is not my father's life. This is not my my friends and everybody in the neighborhood's life. This is my life, and if I don't take responsibility for it, I'm going to lose it, understand? And I'm going to lose it with no benefit. So I have to and so that type of attitude, that snap, that's that changing point. And this is where you start to mature. See, the point that people don't ever mature, and you see as they get older, like 30 years old, 40 years old, is that they're still living in this mindset of this victim, where they're blaming everybody. And they're still, it's still like 30 something years old, 40 years old, still blaming his mother, My mother was a drug addict. I had to go visit my mother, and she was locked up in drug rehab centers when I was a kid. My father was addicted to drugs. My father's life, like drugs, destroyed that side of like my father. They destroyed him. And if I were to tell you the stories that my young brother and sister have to tell, from because I was in Yemen, I wasn't here, but like they had to live through that. My young brother and my young sister, they had to live through that. And if I had told you those stories, wallahi, you just nightmares. You know, and I could sit there and I could blame and sit there and play that blame game. You know, I probably had every right because everybody kept telling me. Even my stepmother, even to the day, she just tells me, like, you know, they destroyed your life. I was like, no, you know, but that's over. Now it's my life. You know, once I got to that point when I was locked up, I realized I keep putting me here. It's me that keeps putting me here. It's not my mother. It's not my father. And I mean, I can sit there, like I said, I can say, okay, I got anger issues because, oh, my dad left when, you know, my dad abandoned us, you know, whatever. You know, he didn't really abandon us, but I mean, technically he got strung out on drugs and that was it. You know, he had visitation rights, but he just stopped coming. You know, he stopped coming. So, you know, whatever. I mean, whatever. I can sit here and blame him, but I'm not. You know, I'm not going to blame. At that point in my mind, I knew that this is my responsibility. And so I matured, you know, like, not to the point, like, you know what I'm saying, it wasn't like this super transition, because as soon as I got out of jail, and like I told you, I went down the street, got Newports, you know, I got home, I had 2 friends that I called, only 2, and I didn't tell anybody else I was getting out, not the girl, not anybody, because the girl, she refused. She told me she said she's not sure about this, she has to think about it. I was like, whatever, okay, khalas. I just consider that finished. And then, you know, even though I was with her for like years, you know, but I said, I'm done. You know, I'm just like, but, so my 2 friends that I did call, they came over, you know, and so we smoking weed. And then I said, all right, let's go to the bookstore. You know, I said, like, you know, even though I was like, I still, like I said, I'm not like completely transitioned. You know, I'm not like, you know, I feel like, you know, there's change, right? And there's something there, but it's just like, it's in progress. You know, it's still, you know, the new, what you call it, the new updates are still uploading. So it's, you know, it's still a little bit rough around, I'm still a bit rough around the edges. So I'm still like, you know, getting out, I'm still drinking, still doing drugs, you know, like weed and stuff like that. Nothing, you know, like drugs, you know, but you know, and now I go to a bookstore, you know, I'm like, then I start buying books. Because what happens is, if you ever read books on history, you know, books of history, they quote other books. So I always read like revolutionary books. I was always into like revolutionary stuff. I wasn't, you know, like I would be reading, you know, communist books on communism. So even before I got locked up that time, I'd already read like, you know, the Communist Manifesto. I had different books by Karl Marx. I had selected works of Mao Zedong. You know, I was buying it volume by volume at the used bookshop, so I would just go and get 1 volume at a time. I had, you know, the book about imperialism by Vladimir Lenin. You know, so I was like all over the place, but I didn't know the Che Guevara thing. I didn't know about that. So what happened was, I guess I'm assuming it was from Kwame Nkrumah, not Kwame Nkrumah, sorry. Maybe it was Kwame Nkrumah, because Che Guevara, he had gone to the Congo to actually fight in the Congo after the death of Patrice Lumumba. He actually did do that, and he has diaries that he wrote in the Congo. But it was a bust. Like, I mean, it was you know, they went there, they didn't stay too long. The army found out about him, they had to flee, and they went back to Cuba, and that's where he ended up in Bolivia, and then he ended up getting killed in Bolivia. But he was in the Congo, so it might have been in Kwame Nkrumah's book, or it could have also been in The Wretched of the Earth, where he was also. But I kept seeing his name pop up in different books, so I said, okay, let me go get his books. Let me find out about this guy. So the first book that I found was, well, he wrote a book. It's called Guerrilla Warfare. So that was the first one I found. But guerrilla warfare was not really a book about his life. It was a book about guerrilla warfare, about tactics in guerrilla warfare. So I was like, that's not what I'm looking for. But I bought it because it was available, right? And I read it. I read it like 2 or 3 times. And then I found the next book I found was the Reminiscence of the Cuban Revolutionary War. They have different names for the book sometimes, but the one that I bought was called the Reminiscence of the Cuban Revolutionary War. So it was his diaries that he actually wrote while he was in the Cuban Revolutionary War. So I bought that book. I went home and I read it. I sat up all night for like 2 nights, 3 nights straight, and just reading until I finished the book. It's probably like 300, 400, like 300 pages, I say. And I would stay up all night, because at this time when I got out of jail, well, at first everything was like smooth sailing, right? So you know, I think I went back. I was just trying to get a job, just trying to work, and you know, I mean, you know, like I said, I'm like here and there. You know, there's this like level of maturity that started, you know, where I'm like different. I'm seeing things different. I'm acting different, And even like everybody saw that, everybody started to look at me like, you're not the same. So it's just, it's just that mindset, that change in attitude. So you'd be surprised at just like the change of attitude, how much it changes, how people view you, and but at that time, like, I was much more serious about this stuff. I was much more serious. So I just kept reading. Like I read the Cuban Revolutionary War, the reminiscence of the Cuban Revolution. I was hooked. I was like, that's it. My mother used to come like she would wake up and come out to go to work, and I'd be sitting there on the couch reading a book from the night before. Like she went to bed and I was on the couch reading, and she woke up and I was on the couch reading. Like I would read 8 hours straight. I couldn't put the book down. And I was a slow reader, because obviously in those days I used to smoke a lot of weed. So sometimes I'd have to read the page like 2 or 3 times because I wanted to understand every single thing, and obviously, I was a high school dropout. I didn't really get educated. So all the reading that I did on my own. I never, did all that stuff in school. So it took me a while, to start getting the pace of reading and getting accustomed to reading. So, and when I started to notice that the weed was messing up my ability, I stopped smoking weed. I stopped smoking everything. I like everything. Stopped drinking, So there's this long period, and it had nothing to do with Islam. This is the thing. It was all just this whole revolutionary fervor. So like, and that's all I was doing. So I remember like one time I had a job. I was working at a Wendy's. This is like right around that time, and I was working on the day shift. On one day I was working. Sometimes I work night shift, day shift. And I'd walk like this Wendy's is like I had to walk like from my house. There's like woods that separates my house from the next street over. So I had to walk through these woods in the afternoon, and then walk through this whole other neighborhood, which was the neighborhood that we were gonna go fight in when I got arrested, which is Brookview. I had to walk through this neighborhood and get on the main street, which is Atlantic Boulevard, and walk all the way to Regency. Which is, so I'm coming from Beach Boulevard all the way to Regency. If anybody knows from Jackson, that's a long walk. And that's how I used to walk to work every day. I had to walk that like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon to get to work. And then I get off of work at 11 and I have to walk through those woods at night, And, those woods, like people used to steal cars and leave the cars in the woods. So you don't know what you're going to encounter when you're in those woods. And then you got water moccasins and all that. Typical like National Geographic type stuff in Florida, but you also got like pit bulls. You got people that are gonna rob you. So like even at night, it's just a customary in my neighborhood. Like whenever we were walking out at night, if we saw a car coming up the street, like we dip behind a bush. We didn't just stand out. You don't just stand out on the street like an idiot. You either get behind a car, or you just walk up to a house like you live there. But you try to do something to like avoid like just being out on the street when a car comes by, because at 11 o'clock at night you don't want to be walking out on the street. Because I know, because we used to catch people like that, and we used to look for people like that. So it's not, So whenever I was out, I used to always just dip. I wouldn't just be walking. I would walk out once I see like headlights. Like that. Straight up ninjutsu. Straight up ninjutsu. I like shokusugi, man. Seriously, it just disappeared. But so I did like that. But there was one day I was working in the night, the day shift, because they needed somebody. I guess somebody called out. It's a Peruvian guy. This guy from Peru. And so I remember like one day I was all on this revolutionary book stuff, man. And so the guy was like, "Hey, James, go take out the garbage." I was like, "First off, you call me Muhammad. Second thing, I'm not taking out no garbage. Why is it me? I gotta take out the garbage. This is the problem. You guys, you get this authority, and all you want to do is you just want to like punish the proletariat. You bourgeoisie. That's all you." And I'm sitting there going off on the manager of Wendy's now. So the guy looks at. He's just like taking it. He's like, "Okay." Mm-hmm. He said, "Is that really how you feel?" And I said, "Yeah. Yeah, I'm tired of this, man. You just want to hold the working man down. You just want to oppress us. You treat us like a slave. Take out this garbage, clean this, wash this. You can't get nobody else to do it. Why you keep telling me to do it?" So he said, "Are you done?" I said, "Yeah, I'm done." He said, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Whatever, man. Just talk." He said, "You know where I'm from?" I said, "No." He said, "I'm from Peru." I said, "Congratulations." So he looked at, he just like, my sarcasm, because I was bad attitude, it was very, very bad attitude still, especially now I'm reading revolutionary stuff, so it just made the attitude even worse. And it's like in a video that I was talking about the arrogance, like how we were so arrogant we like, get this little bit of knowledge, and we just like, you know, puffy chested, and you know. So he told me, he said, look, he said, I come from Peru. He said, my father's a farmer. He said, we know. He said, I worked on the farm. My father, he saved up for years to get me a visa to come to America, so I can come to America and work and send them back money, so they have money. So you, all the stuff that you keep talking about that you're reading in these books, he said, I lived it. You don't live it. You know, he said, we went through that government oppression. My father, he got oppressed by the government and everything with the, you know, because he's a farmer. He got mistreated. He got his land taken. He got all this stuff started happening. So what are you talking about? Take out the garbage. That's how I'm taking out the garbage. So I never, ever gave that guy any flack anymore. But it goes to show you, it's just like we just talk. Us in America, like we watch too many movies. But then when we actually go overseas and, we, you know, like when I went to Yemen and I saw that, you know, and then not just that, but then I actually living in real poverty. You know, I had to live in real poverty. Then that was it, Akhir. I'm not talking that stuff anymore. I'm not talking that stuff anymore. This is, you know, of course, you know, us. I mean, like I said, I mean, we weren't a rich, my family's not rich. We didn't grow up with that, you know, and like I never lived in a 2-story house, you know. He used to go to my uncle's house. He had a 2-story house and be like, mashallah, it's like a mansion. You know, so I mean, it's not like we grew up with money, but still, our situation's way better. You know, you talk to the Cuban immigrants, you talk to the people that come from Peru, and they went through some trauma. They went through some drama to get here, you know, and they work hard, and they do the job, and they don't complain. You know, that dude, he used to work. You know, if anybody called out, he's the first one to, you know, to go in and do everything. And I've never seen any of those managers that worked harder than him. You know, and that's just a reality. Us, we're just a bunch of talk. So Allah Musta'an. So, but still, again, I would like to say that, you know, I learned my lesson that day and then became a better person. But no, I continue on, you know. So, and you know, I just kept reading. At this time, it's just like I said, it's just books. And you know, the reminiscence of the Cuban Revolutionary War. Then I got like, I think his name is John Lee Anderson or whatever. He wrote like a big 800-page biography of Che Guevara. I bought that, I read that, and then I just started reading about the Black Panthers. I got the Black Panther Speak, you know, and I was just all into everything, you know. And then I just got real revolutionary, you know. So, and then that's all I would talk about. So every time that people will come to my house, that's all I would talk about. And then about this time, you know, everything's cold, you know, going good. Like I said, I'm just working just these little petty jobs, and then boom, I get a call from my grandmother one day. My mother, she's like, she's at work. At least, I mean, well, she was at work. And then I get a call from my grandmother one day. So my grandmother says, your mother's not going to be coming home today. I said, why? She said, she's been arrested at work. I said, arrested for what? I said, don't. Okay, she's been arrested at work. Now I already know what happened because she had already been arrested for this before. So that was it. I just got out of jail. I'm trying to get my life together. And now my mother, now she gets locked up. So I don't, no clue what happened. I had to wait. You know, I called up the jail to find out when the first visitation day that I could go visit her. Because at this time, like my grandfather's dead now. So my grandfather used to get my mother out of trouble before. My grandfather used to get a lawyer, get all this stuff, you know, and always help her out. But now my grandfather's dead. So now she's in jail. Nobody's bonding her out. Nobody's doing anything. So she ended up getting bonded out. I think my grandmother, she bonded her out eventually. Because she did come home, and while she was going to court, she didn't get sentenced until the next year. And yeah, so Allah Musta'an, like that was just like, you know, again, like I said, it's just trials and tribulations. So once I got the first chance to go visit my mother, I went to visit her. You know, this is the first time. I mean, I visited her before when I was young. Like I said, she used to get locked up. When she got locked up before, she got locked up and placed in drug rehabilitation centers. So we had like visits, like there was no partition, but like this is the first time now with the plexiglass and the plastic phone that I'm talking to my mother. And I, you know, as soon as I come in, like my mother now, she's in the jail suit, and I'm sitting there like, I pick up the phone, I'm like, never thought this day would come. You know, it's like, isn't this a change? You know, and then she just looked at me and she's like, what are we gonna do? Like, what I mean, because me and my mother were very close. My mother and my sister were not so close. My father loved my sister more than anybody. But me and my mother used to sit out, like sit and drink and just talk. Like she had her husband was locked up in prison for 11 years. My stepfather, and so she used to have to go down to, I can't remember where it was, but it was somewhere like Central Florida. She used to have to go and visit him in prison all the time, right? Whenever his visitation, like every other week. So sometimes she wants me to go with her to keep her company. I tell her, like, I'll go with you, but you have to, you know what I'm saying, I'm sitting in a hotel room. I can't go to the prison because I'm a convicted felon. So I can't visit him. So that means I just have to stay in the hotel room. She just wants somebody to keep her company. So, I mean, I was like, I'll go with you, but you know, you're going to have to buy me something to keep me busy up in that hotel room because I can't, I'm going to sit there like, what, doing nothing. I mean, give me something to drink or something. So she'd go there and buy me like a whole bunch of like quarts of like old English malt liquor, you know, and just like I just sit up in the hotel room drinking the whole weekend. That was like the type of relationship that me and my mother had as I got older, you know. And even when I was younger, she taught me how to swim, she taught me how to write, she taught me how to read, she taught me all this stuff. She used to always sit there, you know. So we had this good relationship. So that's why I want you to understand when I spoke about that previous video. You know, that when I, you know, picked her up and moved her, that is like unbelievable because me and my mother were like just like that all the time. And you know, every time, like my mother's like always helping me out. She's coming to visit me every time when I'm in jail. And as soon as my mother got locked up, boom, first time that she can visit, that somebody can visit her, I was there. You know, when she got locked up and she got put in the drug rehabilitation program in CCD, I went to visit her. You know, before I left Jacksonville. So, I mean, that's just a relationship that we had. So, but I mean, that killed me, you know, because I'm like, all right. And you know, when I'm going home and that's what I'm thinking, I'm like, why is it that every time that I keep, you know, moving forward, I get hit from the side, you know, I just hit from the side. So, and this is what I want you to understand. And this is the last thing that I'm going to say in this video, inshallah, is that you got to look at the trials and tribulations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing you with. See, those trials and tribulations, they were difficult at that time, but they were nothing compared to the stuff that I had to go through in Yemen. But it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preparing me for that. And I did, you know, of course we're young and we don't know this, but we have to recognize that there's wisdom in every single trial and tribulation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us through. There's hikmah in it. And it's, you know, it's either to wake us up or it's to prepare us for something. Like in this case, it's probably both. To wake me up because I still, like I said, I wasn't Islamic oriented, and inshallah in the next video I'll get to like where that came about, where I started focusing on Islam. Like right now I'm still just revolutionary, and you know there's more to the story, you know, inshallah, that I'll go to either in the next video or the video after that, probably the next one, inshallah. But then I'll go like either the next video or the one after that, I'll go like what brought me back to like getting serious about Islam, because this now leads me to going to Atlanta, and you know, but the point is that this time it's not my concern. I'm just stuck on this revolutionary stuff. I'm like, you know, I used to, like, one time I was in the masjid, and the professor from the Jacksonville University came to the masjid to visit, and I was there. But this was not this time. This was like a little bit earlier when I was like 18, 19 years old. And he came and he saw me. I was the only one in the masjid. And he said, he started talking to me. So you're Muslim? I said, yeah. And then he said, so what type of Muslim are you? I said, yeah, I'm like communist Muslim. He's like, communist Muslim? I was like, yeah. He's like, that's strange. I said, yeah. You know what to do? And he said, I said, you know, I'm a Muslim, but I just been reading all these books about revolution, and that's the ideology that, because I mean, like I say, you know, we didn't know. We had Bukhari, we had Muslim, I had Sunan Abi Dawud at home, but we didn't understand like the extent of like the laws of Islam, and that Islam is the perfect system. And we didn't understand all that. So I was like thinking, okay, Islam's my religion, but the communism, the socialism, it's my political ideology. This is the thinking that I had, you know. And I sat there and talked with that professor for a while. Like he sat there and he didn't, you know, we were talking about books and going over, like he said, well, where did you get this from? And I started telling him the different books that I was reading and everything. And he was just shocked. He was like, and if I told him I was a high school dropout, he probably would have been even more shocked. But along with time. But the point is like getting back to this is like the trials and tribulations that we go through. You know, you have to understand that there's a purpose for them. There's a reason. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's testing you with certain things and you don't know why. So that, like, for me, every time that my life would start to get, you know, kind of like you know, like not mustaqim, but like mustaqir, like, you know, where I kind of got some stability in my life. Bam, I get sideswiped every single time. So like here my mother gets locked up, and I'm like, oh no, you know, and she's gonna, like, there's no getting her out of this situation now. And like I said before, my grandfather get the lawyer, you know, they pay money, they do all this stuff, and it gets her out of this situation. But like, there's no getting her out of this one. Like, she's going to jail, you know. As they bailed her out, I guess my grandmother, like I said, my grandmother probably bailed her out, and she's going back and forth to court. So while that time, like during that time, like me and my, like when I wasn't, like what I used to do is I used to sit up with her when she got out of jail, and I just, like, you know, we probably be drinking together and talking, and she go into the room and go to sleep, and I'll grab the book and start reading, you know, and unless it was like one of those times I, like, because there was a time when, like I said, I stopped drinking, but that's still, that's coming up. That's where I hit the where I started getting back into Islam. But at this point, I'm still like a wishy-washy communist, you know, Allah musta'an. But you know, just take those trials and tribulations and just understand this with wisdom. Because wallahi, if I knew later, if I knew, you know, it's always like this hindsight 20/20 thing, right? But I mean, obviously we're not gonna know. But if I knew, like, at that time what I was gonna go through in Yemen, I would have been happy, more than happy, to take those trials and tribulations. Because there's no way that I could have been patient with the stuff that I was patient with in Yemen if I hadn't gone through that stuff before. It's no way. It's no way. I'd have probably lost my mind. So Allah musta'an. So inshallah, with this one I'll end it. Inshallah, like I said, in the next two I'll talk about that. Inshallah, it's good. You know, about, of course, my mother's going back to jail, and you know, there's a lot of craziness about to start happening. Allah musta'an. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.